breaking fourth walls for aliens, foregoing science for love, and reality versus illusion. These bargain basement endings left many audiences feeling shortchanged, but hey, at least we got to see Batman fake his own death, so there's that. Directors have imagined the end of the world 1,000 times over, but audiences keep coming back for more apocalyptic thrillers. A doomsday film done right is always both thrilling and thought-provoking, encouraging viewers to wonder what these visions of the future reveal about the state of humanity today. Of course, an apocalyptic movie that ends on a sour note just feels like a shoddy attempt at indulging in spectacle without offering anything of substance. That's exactly where director Alex Proyas's 2009 film Knowing falls flat. A young boy named Caleb discovers a page full of mysterious numbers during a school event. His astrophysicist father, John, discovers that they represent the dates of big disasters, and that the biggest disaster of all, a massive solar flare, will happen in mere days. Just before life on our planet is decimated, a mysterious spaceship descends from the heavens, with alien strangers beckoning Caleb and his new friend Abby to come with them. The children are whisked away to an Earth-like planet without their parents, and the film ends abruptly. As you'll see again later on this list, It Was Aliens doesn't make for a particularly compelling twist ending. There's more questions raised than answers given, but it doesn't seem like anyone is clamoring for answers after that disappointing finale.
Well, what do you believe?
I think shit just happens.
The 1978 big-screen adaptation of Superman starring Christopher Reeve is, without a shadow of a doubt, a stone-cold classic and a major landmark in the history of superhero media. The Richard Donner-directed film was one of the first to approach its source material with both ambition and seriousness, resulting in a sincere and reverent adaptation that opened the door for other filmmakers to do the same. Working together, Donner and Reeve infused The Man of Steel with humor and humanity, telling the type of story that Superman fans had waited decades for. For all the many assets and accolades held by Superman, however, it also comes with one massive liability to many fans: its infamously cheap time-reversing ending. Like some of the other endings on this list, Superman features an otherwise complete finale to the film's events that's quickly rewound and replaced with something less satisfying. Rather than see Superman deal with the emotional turmoil of losing Lois Lane, theatrical audiences were treated to the hero literally altering the rotation of the Earth to do things over again. People could believe a man could fly faster than a speeding bullet and punch more powerfully than a locomotive, but reversing time was just a bridge too far for some. Despite an ending that feels disjointed and incomplete, 10 Cloverfield Lane is worth a watch for sure. The pacing in Dan Trachtenberg's intense thriller never lets up and maintains an unrelenting, uncomfortably tense atmosphere all the way through. After Michelle is knocked out in a car accident, she wakes up in a strange bunker with two men she's never met. Howard, the owner of the bunker, tells her that an event has occurred on the surface that makes it uninhabitable and that she's only safe underground. As time goes on, Michelle realizes that Howard is dangerous, and if she wants a chance at surviving, she'll have to take her chances topside. She manages to barely escape Howard, but when she makes her escape and finally emerges from the bunker, it turns out that the Doomsday Prepper may not have been so crazy after all.
Crazy is building your ark after the flood has already come.
That's right, it's aliens. After barely avoiding a UFO's attacks, Michelle makes her way to Houston to aid the survivors of the invasion, and credits roll. Audiences may not have been terribly surprised by the sci-fi twist, especially since the original Cloverfield leaned into it hard. Still, a number of viewers held out hope for something a bit more subversive and grounded. Steven Spielberg's 2005 film adaptation of War of the Worlds follows Tom Cruise as Ray Ferrier, a dock worker in New York who is estranged from his daughter and son. He watches them while his ex-wife goes out of town to visit her parents in Boston, and while she's gone, things go horribly wrong. After a series of lightning strikes disrupt the power grid, some sort of war machine rises from the ground and begins vaporizing people, causing mass destruction. An alien species is behind the attack, and Ray is on a mission to protect his children and reunite them with their mother. In the end, the entire family miraculously survives and finds each other in Boston, while the aliens are suddenly killed off by the microbes that cover every surface on Earth. As it turns out, even Spielberg agrees with fans who think the movie wraps up a bit too easily. The director is quoted in the book James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction as saying, "That film doesn't have a good ending. I never could figure out how to end that darn thing." Ever since The Sixth Sense, it seems like most of director M. Night Shyamalan's signature twist endings have been misses rather than hits. Although Signs is generally regarded as a standout entry in his filmography, accepting the ending requires some serious suspension of disbelief. To be fair, it's a film about an alien invasion, so it's not like every plot point could be 100% plausible. But there's a glaring hole in the reason behind the aliens' demise. After extraterrestrials begin terrorizing the planet and target his family, former Minister Graham Hess discovers that simply splashing the aliens with water will cause them to react as though they've been burned, eventually killing them. The aliens are now forced to quickly flee the planet as they realize it's inhospitable for them.
There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?
Here's the problem. The Earth is 70% water, and usually there's plenty of moisture in the air. The aliens would have been exposed to water the moment they exited their ships without suits. Does that make Signs a bad movie? Not necessarily, but its ending left a lot of people feeling like the aliens, burned by H2O. The ending of David Fincher's 1997 thriller The Game is an odd case. Since its release, fans and critics have voiced opposite opinions about its effectiveness. One side considers it unsatisfying and invalidating, while the other side maintains that the invalidation is the whole point. Whether or not the ending is just the intended final turn of the titular game, it's almost impossible to deny that it feels pretty cheap. The plot of The Game revolves around Michael Douglas's character, Nicholas, becoming embroiled in a series of increasingly bizarre and existentially confusing circumstances. They ultimately include Nicholas in a live burial and a rooftop fratricide. So when it's revealed that everything was staged, no one was actually hurt, and nothing happened as Nicholas thought it did, a lot of viewers have been left feeling cheated. Even Nicholas's final prize, a shirt that says, "I was drugged and left for dead in Mexico and all I got was this stupid t-shirt," can come across like a pointed jab at everyone who had become invested in the narrative. Some people adore the ending of The Game for its boldness and absurdity, but just as many were turned off by its sudden and dramatic shift in tone. The Indiana Jones franchise has captivated audiences for decades. It began in 1981 with Raiders of the Lost Ark and continued with Temple of Doom and Last Crusade completing before the decade was over. Nearly 20 years passed without another sequel, until Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull premiered in 2008. An early scene in which Indy survives an atomic explosion inside a lead-lined fridge was the subject of hot debate, but the ending was also so nonsensical that it felt like a disservice to the entire franchise.
What exactly am I being accused of besides surviving a nuclear blast?
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull wraps up by waving away the entire plot with a simple yet overdone explanation. It was aliens. To top it all off, after seeing a spaceship rise from underneath an ancient city and watching some of his colleagues get sucked into a vortex, the final moments essentially just show Indy returning to normal life. Indy has witnessed some pretty wild supernatural happenings in his first 3 adventures, but somehow this sci-fi twist feels like something else entirely. The fan community's negative reaction to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is well documented at this point. Whether it was the plot-armored fridge or the extraterrestrial surprise, it seemed like most people who saw the movie when it came out had something to complain about. Just like the 2011 film Limitless, the plot of the science fiction movie Lucy relies on the premise that human beings only use 10% of our brains. This often repeated fact is nothing more than a myth, but even if you accept it as truth solely for the runtime of the film, it still doesn't lead to a solid conclusion. The titular protagonist, Lucy, is kidnapped by drug mules and ends up ingesting an illicit substance that gives her the ability to use more and more of her brain as time goes on. This gives her superhuman powers, including telepathy, telekinesis, and the inability to feel pain. In the final moments of the film, Lucy finally brings her cognitive power to full capacity, and she journeys back in time through the cosmos to the moment of the Big Bang. Her physical body apparently becomes a flash drive, yet she is able to send a text to a police captain she had been working with that simply states, "I am everywhere." Talk about vague. It's unclear as to why anyone thought that this film would be best wrapped up with an ambiguous, bite-sized nugget of philosophy from Lucy. Have you ever seen a magician in action who was so skilled at sleight of hand that for just a moment you were convinced that magic was real? That's basically the idea behind Now You See Me, but kicked up more than a few notches. This infamous film follows a group of 4 highly talented illusionists called the Horsemen, who perform a signature mind-blowing trick. They extract money from wealthy people's bank accounts and give it to audience members. Naturally, the authorities become suspicious of their activities, and FBI agent Dylan Rhodes is on the case. By the end of the film, however, it's revealed that Rhodes himself is actually an illusionist too.
Oh my God. I did not see that coming. That's impossible.
Rhodes had been working behind the scenes as the 5th Horseman the whole time, avenging his father's death by stealing from the people responsible. The Horsemen are all invited to join a secret society called the Eye, and the film turns from a heist thriller to something else entirely at the very last second. With so little clarity over what's real and what's merely an illusion, it's no wonder that audiences left theaters feeling confused. Based on the novel of the same name by Richard Matheson, the post-apocalyptic film I Am Legend follows U.S. Army virologist Robert Neville as he struggles to survive each day in an eerily empty New York City. The majority of those who remain from a lethal viral outbreak have mutated into zombie-like creatures known as the Darkseekers. Neville spends the majority of his time trying to find a cure for the virus, eventually capturing a female Darkseeker to experiment on. After 3 years with no one but his German Shepherd to keep him company, Neville finally meets two fellow survivors, a woman named Anna and her son, Ethan. From there, it's not long before the results of his tests lead him to a cure. When the Darkseekers come after Neville for revenge, he's forced to sacrifice himself to save Anna and Ethan, who protect the cure and escape to a survivors camp. However, the ending of the director's cut follows the theme of the novel more closely and completely flips the perspective of the film in the process. In that version, Neville interacts with the alpha male of the Darkseekers and returns without finding a cure. He realizes that to the Darkseekers, he has actually been the monster all along. Though the theatrical cut is not without its defenders, the only opinion more popular than preferring the director's cut is thinking that the ending of Matheson's book wipes the floor with both. The 2003 extreme French horror film High Tension really seems like it was made twist first, with the story built around it to allow the reveal to happen. As a result, its ending has become one of the most commonly cited in online discussions of bad endings, even frequently proclaimed as one of the worst twists of all time. To make a long and excruciatingly bloody story short, the dramatic twist at the end of High Tension is that the film's slasher killer was secretly one of the movie's two apparent protagonists. That probably would have been fine if it didn't mean that the previous events were physically impossible. Viewers are expected to believe that a character is able to be in two places at once, and that didn't sit well with many, regardless of how good the preceding hour might have been. Critic Maitland McDonough wrote for TV Guide, "Unfortunately, they squandered their white-knuckle goodwill on an 11th hour about-face so preposterous, it undermines everything that preceded it. Perhaps with some more clever writing, High Tension could have stuck the landing, but as it is, it's earned a pretty understandable reputation as an illogical mess." In all fairness to the cast and crew of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, there is no single ending that could have pleased every single one of the franchise's millions of fans. Even with that in mind, however, it's hard to call the ending the filmmakers ultimately chose anything but cheap and unsatisfying.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
For a great many Star Wars enthusiasts, the ending of The Rise of Skywalker was the worst part of a trilogy that had already featured several objectionable sequences. But unlike the trilogy's other alleged faults, which most often offended by ignoring characters in canon from days of Star Wars past, the finale committed an even worse and even cheaper sin. It blatantly erased the overarching story of its own trilogy. Rey being the child of nobodies showed that anyone can be a Jedi, but Episode 9 reversed that by making her the granddaughter of one of the franchise's most powerful bad guys. There are too many offenses to list in The Rise of Skywalker, from the awkward kiss to the fact that Palpatine is there at all. But taken all together, it felt to many fans that the ending was nothing more than a series of rushed choices made to drum up nostalgia. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, like the vast majority of Hitchcock's films, is an excellent piece of cinema with an enduring legacy and pervasive influence. It introduced mainstream audiences to an entirely new brand of horror, one that generates effectiveness by remaining vague throughout and never explaining itself. A major component of that haunting ambiguity is the film's ending, which consists of a mere fade to black after the main characters drive away. Though the birds have ceased their assault for the moment, there is no answer as to whether or not they'll begin again, only heightening the terror. While the ending is an effective one, it's also undoubtedly a cheap one, especially given the fact that the original script included an answer and resolution involving a car chase, which Hitchcock simply cut. Film scholars and enthusiasts are of two minds about the ending of The Birds. Either its uncertainty makes it thoughtful and effective, or it finishes on an unsatisfactory note. No one could ever dispute that it's a memorable and influential horror classic, but the quality of its ending is certainly up for debate. Based on Don Winslow's novel of the same name, Oliver Stone's 2012 thriller Savages essentially develops into little more than worn-out tropes in the final scenes. Wealthy marijuana growers Chon and Ben, who are in a polyamorous relationship with their girlfriend Ophelia, get caught up in a violent Mexican drug cartel. Ophelia is kidnapped and held against her will to prevent Chon and Ben from backing out of the partnership and leaving the world of crime. As the conflicts escalate, all of the high-stakes drama culminates in a gunfight, which naturally doesn't go as planned. Ben is fatally wounded, and Chon administers a lethal injection to Ben, Ophelia, and himself so that they can all die together.
That's the way I imagined it. But the truth has a mind of its own.
Of course, the film ends up taking a different turn. Ophelia wakes up very much alive, revealing that the previous scene was nothing but a nightmare as DEA agents end up capturing some of the high-ranking members of the cartel. The three escape to an undisclosed tropical island where they live on the beach. So it turns out that the stakes were pretty low for the protagonists all along. It's no wonder that Savages never received the same acclaim as many of Oliver Stone's other movies like Platoon and JFK. It's no secret that the ending to James Cameron's 1997 historical epic Titanic has been met with an ocean of deep, dark, frigid criticism since its release. What may surprise you, however, is that two entirely separate sequences in the finale have generated mass derision, and both for their own unique approaches of cheapness. Of course, the infamous door scene leading to the death of Jack has inspired an endless amount of scrutiny, but so has the emotional wrap-up sequence in the modern day, which ends with Rose dying and meeting Jack in heaven. That final moment would be incredibly sweet if she didn't also have a husband up there waiting for her too. As anyone who's participated in discussions about Titanic knows, though, it's the door scene that has truly captured people's attention. The question of whether or not both lovebirds could have fit on the floating door together has been raised for decades, even prompting the Mythbusters to test it out for themselves. In 2022, though, Cameron himself revealed that he had funded a scientific study with a hypothermia expert. He told Variety, "We have done a scientific study to put this whole thing to rest and drive a stake through its heart once and for all." During his arduous preparations for Interstellar, Christopher Nolan went to great lengths to ensure the movie's scientific accuracy. The director worked with Nobel laureate in physics Kip Thorne, whose influence on the project extended from its initial conception all the way through writing and digital effects. The end result is a film deeply rooted in the known behaviors of stars, gravity, black holes, and relativity, until its surreal ending, a sequence that many fans consider frustrating and cheap. After sacrificing himself by falling into a black hole, astronaut Joseph Cooper finds himself in a 5-dimensional tesseract made by time-traveling humans from the future. By communicating with his daughter in the past, Cooper is able to save humanity, and in the process, he learns that the most powerful force in the universe is not gravity or entropy, but love.
Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
The heartstring-tugging ending of Interstellar certainly has its defenders, but many viewers felt annoyed that the sci-fi epic didn't stay rooted in scientific accuracy. Is it a beautiful moment or a disappointing cop-out? That's up to you to decide. Guillermo del Toro's 2017 fantasy romance The Shape of Water is an excellent movie with a solid amount of awards and critical ratings that speak for themselves. There is simply no deriding the Best Picture winner as a whole, but that doesn't mean that every one of its parts is untouchable. Throughout the film, protagonist Eliza and her amphibious lover are pursued by the evil Colonel Strickland, who intends to dissect the creature in the name of scientific progress. However, after Eliza is tragically shot, it's the amphibian man who slices Strickland's neck instead, killing him in a twist of karmic justice. Many viewers expected to see Eliza die in her lover's arms, but the actual ending ended up being a bit more controversial. Eliza seemingly dies in the water, only to be magically resurrected and granted gills by the amphibian man. For many, the sudden and unprecedented use of a drama-neutralizing superpower to undo previous story beats felt like a cop-out along the lines of Superman's time reversal. So, what would have been a better finale? In her essay for High on Films, writer Pallavi Dandamati wrote, "Instead of the appearance of Eliza's gills, the movie could just have ended with both of them in the water, holding on to each other. It would still be ambiguous, but the implications of that ending would be different and far more powerful." One of the most disappointing, frustrating types of cheap movie endings is when a film decides to end without addressing a main theme that it spent ample time setting up. It's worse when that theme was built up over multiple films, a trilogy for instance. And of course, it's even worse than that when the ending directly contradicts the main theme instead of simply ignoring it. Unfortunately, for many fans of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, in their eyes, that worst-case scenario is exactly what they got with The Dark Knight Rises. In order to prevent Bane's neutron bomb from destroying Gotham, Bruce Wayne hooks it to his airship and flies it over the bay. In his final act as Batman, he sacrifices his life to save the people of his city. At least that's what the movie wants you to think at first. During the final scene in Florence, Italy, Alfred sees Wayne alive and well. It turns out that the hero actually faked his own death, having fixed the autopilot function in his flying machine. Wayne's survival, along with the tacked-on reveal that police officer John Blake's legal first name is Robin, felt needless and pandering to many. Jim Jarmusch is known for his thoughtful films with independent sensibilities. His takes on genre fare, from the martial arts mob flick Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai to the vampire romance only lovers left alive have been met with critical acclaim. That's why when it was announced that Jarmusch's next project would be a zombie comedy with what was called the biggest cast ever disassembled, fans of the filmmaker were pretty hyped. Starring everyone from Bill Murray and Adam Driver to Danny Glover and Tilda Swinton, The Dead Don't Die ended up being an entertaining, albeit slow meta-comedy in which a shift in the Earth's axis has caused the deceased to start rising out of their graves. So how did this rollicking undead romp turn so many people against it by the end? No, it couldn't be. There's no way! Well, if you can believe it, it's aliens once again. If you're surprised to see a UFO make an appearance in this zombie flick, you're not alone. So are the main characters, who fully annihilate the fourth wall as they remark on the bizarre plot development.
Was that in the script? No. Not the one I read.
Jarmusch was almost certainly satirizing the trend of twist-ending aliens with his film's finale, but many audience members who weren't in on the joke left the theater with a bad taste in their mouth.